Write the Book Now.
Interview and podcast show.
Podcast show?
Podcast show.
Dr. Sharon H. Porter believes she encourages anyone that's contemplating becoming a published author
to go ahead and write the book now.
Dr. Sharon H. Porter.
Thank you for joining us. I am Dr. Sharon H. Porter, host and creator of the Write the Book Now interview and podcast show. Our guest this week is Miss Sonya Mckinzie, author of Perfectly Imperfect, Moving Above and Beyond the Pain. Sonya was born and raised in Brunswick, Georgia, and is a current resident of Lawrenceville, Georgia. She is a mother of one beautiful daughter. She received her bachelor's in business management and master's in human services counseling, minoring in addictions and recovery from Liberty University. Sonya also holds certifications in the areas of victim advocacy, human resources, management, and leadership. As a 14-year survivor and thriver, she is the founder of Women of Virtue Transitional Foundation, a Duluth, Georgia-based nonprofit organization and advocate domestic violence and sexual abuse victims. Sonya has published 2 books, Heaven Rain on Me and Perfectly Imperfect, Moving Above and Beyond the Pain. She is also one of the 20 co-authors of Soul Source, published by Cheryl Polote-Williamson. She will be releasing her 3rd book, ThriveHER, later this year.
With Dr. Sharon H. Porter.
Thank you so much for joining us today. This is Dr. Sharon, host and creator of the Write the Book Now interview and podcast show. I am being joined today by my guest, Miss Sonya Mckinzie. Sonya, welcome to Write the Book Now.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here with you.
Absolutely. And Sonya is the author of Perfectly Imperfect, Moving Above and Beyond the Pain. And I cannot wait to dive into this book. But Sonya, we've just heard all of these wonderful things that you've done and that you're doing. But tell my listeners who Sonya Mckinzie really is.
Wow. So Sonya Mckinzie, down to the core, is a mother of an amazing 6-year-old. That would be the second thing. But the very first thing is I'm a child of God. God comes first with everything that I do. And then my daughter, who is my world, my one and only, she comes next. And then comes everything else. I am a, if you will, humanitarian. I do a lot of community outreach work for domestic violence victims and survivors, and for young ladies, and for the homeless. I am a nonprofit organization founder and executive director. The organization is Women of Virtue Transitional Foundation, and the mission behind our organization is encouraging and empowering women who are victims to go from surviving to thriving, and to remove them from situations that are abusive, or provide them with the resources to get them out of that situation and into healthy lifestyles. And then also, in addition to that, the other arm to that is I am here to empower young ladies. My daughter is a motivation for that, encouraging young ladies to accept themselves, love themselves, respect themselves and others. And one more thing I must share, the motivation behind the organization is that I am a survivor of domestic violence, a second-generation survivor. So that's who I am.
Wow, thank you so much. And you know, in your book, Perfectly Imperfect, Moving Above and Beyond the Pain, it's really a combination of poetry and narratives that you really help someone who's going through difficult times, actually. You're very transparent with your struggles. So can you talk a little bit about actually the writing of this book?
Absolutely. This is actually my 2nd book, and the purpose behind this book was not to make a profit off of it, was not to make a major benefit from it financially, but to put it in the hands of survivors of abuse at no charge. The book is composed of just the details of what I did to move above and beyond my pain of abuse, to move above and beyond the abuse that I witnessed, that my mom went through. It includes scriptures, just different, if you will, paths that I went through or walked in order to get to my situation where I am now, to get beyond the pain. I have poetry in there that I wrote. I have information about poetry therapy. It's very therapeutic to those who've experienced a traumatizing situation like abuse. It's got sections in there for journaling. So if they are going through something, say they're having a trigger and they just need to jot their thoughts down, there's pages for them to do that. There's pages for reference to the scriptures and the poetry that's in there. And this book, actually, I sell this book, but I also put it in hands of survivors and victims at no charge, because I want them to, if it's something that I can do, whether it's a book, whether it's a conversation, whether it's a hug, whether it's a resource, if it's something that I can do, I will do it. This book, to me, is worth $10, $12, whatever, giving that away. It doesn't matter to me. What matters is that they take something, whether it's a little nugget or it's a big nugget from this book, and it helps them move towards a healthy situation and away from that abusive situation.
Wow. And so you actually counsel individuals who are going through it. You advocate for them, and I really see this book as an inspiration to abuse victims. So do you only deal with domestic abuse, or do you find yourself talking to individuals of different types of abuse?
So I have spoken with sexual abuse victims and women who have been through child abuse, and they're still living that experience. They're still trying to get beyond that. And then, of course, domestic violence abuse victims or survivors, if you will. That's who I connect with on a higher level. We can all relate on any level of abuse. But I cannot, like any other traumatic situation outside of abuse, I'm not familiar with. And my focus is on domestic violence and child abuse and sex abuse, because I've been there and I've done that. So instead of me saying, oh, I understand what you're saying, I can understand, I can relate because of materials or education, I can say that from an education standpoint as well as a survivor standpoint. So while I don't want to push anyone away, I think the best area that I'm most well-versed in is domestic violence and child abuse and sex abuse.
Okay, and that's awesome that you acknowledge that. So let's talk about the title, because really this title is really deep, Sonya. Perfectly Imperfect, moving above and beyond the pain. I mean, that is really deep, and I just want, can you walk us through you actually titling this piece of work?
So I want to try to summarize it. For a long time, I had issue with the way I looked, with my dark complexion, combined with a father not being there, and combined with remembering words from a father who told me that I was ugly, as a young girl, not because he knew, it was ignorance, if you will. He didn't mean it, but just dealing with that and my big lips and big eyes and all, that's what I thought. And in that insecurity, I allowed myself to go through abusive and unhealthy situations. And so it took me well over a decade to get past the pain, to move beyond it, and to accept me in all of my imperfection, my perfectly imperfect imperfections, to accept that I am intentional, that I am intentionally here. I am enough. I am beautiful enough. God made me this way because he intended that to happen. And because I am this way, I am perfectly imperfect. I am perfectly this way. This is the way I was supposed to be. And in that, I've moved above and beyond that pain, that circumstance. I'm not a situation or a second circumstance. I'm not a statistic. I've moved above and beyond that, and God allowed me to do that. God led me from all of that pain and misery, from all of that insecurity, from all of that insecurity, if you will. I moved beyond that. The pain, that is not something that I carry on my back. God helped me through that. And in doing so, again, I am perfectly imperfect. I'm not perfect. I'm human. I'm not perfect, and I'm perfectly okay with being imperfect.
I love it. I love it. I really love it.
I know there was a lot, but I get so passionate about it because,
yes.
Imperfection is perfect enough. No one is perfect. And sometimes I think we tend to forget about that, and we tend to look at people from the outside looking in. And, I have to throw this out as an example. Someone said to me, "You don't look like you've been abused. You don't look like someone who's been abused." And I took a little bit of offense to that, but then I said, wait a minute. It doesn't have a face. Abuse does not have a color. It doesn't have a face. It doesn't have a race. It doesn't have a race. It doesn't have an age. It doesn't have a gender. It happens. So what you see from the outside looking in, it's not a reality. The reality is I was a victim, and I was a survivor. And I moved from that to thriving in surviving and being more than a statistic. I'm not a victim. I'm not perfect. I am not what you think you see. I am human. And that's one of the things that gets me all riled up because there's no specific, because there's no specific face, and people often think,
absolutely.
Oh, goodness, I can't believe you allowed that, So that's my long-winded response to your question.
I love it. Yes, I love it. So, and just really speaking of domestic abuse, we are finding in society that for our young ladies, it's becoming younger and younger and not married even, but, just dating. So how do you address a young lady, who's just actually starting to find herself and to find love, but then find herself in a situation where she's being abused? How do you assist in that process?
What I say to those young ladies, because it's as a teenager or a young lady, first, they don't want to communicate with an adult. They're not interested in communicating with us about what's going on in their lives because they're very emotional at that time. But what I do say to those that I'm able to reach out to, even before or while it's going on, is know that you can recognize an abuser. It's easy. They're possessive. They tell you that they belong to you, that this is mine, you belong to me, very possessive and get upset very easily. They get angry very easily. And what I say to young girls is you have to love yourself enough to move beyond that. You have to understand that you're not deserving of that abuse. You're not deserving of those verbal words that break you down. You're more than that. And you have to love yourself before you can even begin to understand how to love someone else. And so I encourage young ladies, that's my biggest thing with this new Girls Virtue Empowerment program that I have. It's about getting it before it starts. Getting them to a point where they recognize that I am beautiful. I have big eyes, but they're beautiful. I have high cheekbones. I'm skinny. I'm plus size. I'm curvy. I'm beautiful. And I deserve the very best that God has to offer. And I respect myself. I love myself. I love the skin I'm in, whether it's white, black, brown, dark skin, whatever it is. I love this skin I'm in, and I love myself enough to know that someone that tries to possess me, someone that takes control over me, does not love me. I am no one's possession.
Wow.
So, I try to get to those young ladies and have these kind of conversations beforehand, but if they're in those situations, I let them know what the outcome can be. Just remind them that there are so many situations where men don't make it. They lose their lives. And if you're able to stop it in the beginning, if you see these actions, if he's hurting you or if she's hurting you, then you need to move from that situation. Trust me, it will be in your favor if you do. So those kind of little things I kind of share with them. I actually have a friend whose daughter was in a situation like that, and it's hard. When you don't love yourself, and a lot of it comes from that. It comes from experiencing it as a child or witnessing it and seeing that it is accepted, and then turning around and repeating that situation, but accepting it because it just feels like it's natural and it's normal. Or it comes from not loving yourself enough to say that this man or woman does not, or this young man or this young woman doesn't love me. because you don't love yourself, so you just want someone that's going to love you and be there for you regardless of whether they hurt you.
And you mentioned you have a daughter, a young daughter.
I do.
And I know, and you also mentioned that that's really the motivation behind it, and I can definitely see that. So how do you enlighten her, giving her the empowerment that she needs, the same way that you're doing these young ladies that you're mentoring? And is your daughter, like, young, like really young?
She's 6.
Or?
She's
okay,
6,
exactly.
and I can tell you how I do it. Like, people look at me in awe, and I'm so glad, that they really think that this is a positive thing, because she's always with me. When I go to, as a matter of fact, I'm so proud of her. In April of this year, during National Crime Victims Week, they had a walk in downtown Atlanta. It was, I think, walk a mile in our shoes, and you walked around the capital of Atlanta around the block. And my baby said to me, "Mommy, what are we doing?" And I told her in layman's terms, "Baby, we're doing something. We're making a difference for women and men who have been hurt. We're walking a mile in their shoes, and this is why we're walking." And at that time, we were there, and we were in support of my organization as well as Marcy's Law. And so my baby asked for a sign, and she took the sign, and she walked a mile. And she was way ahead. She was ahead of the police officer that was leading everybody. But she was going. I mean, they took – look, all I was doing was just trying to keep up with her, because I knew the reason behind it. But all I have to do is tell her that Mommy's doing this for her organization. Mommy's doing this to help others. We're getting your toys together and giving them away, because there's people that don't have these things. They had to leave their homes because bad things were happening.
Wow.
So that's the conversations that we have, and she receives them, and she understands them. And she's there at every single thing I do, with an exception to a few. She's at every single thing that I do. My events are child-friendly, and she's there. Everything I do, everything. And that's how we conversate. That's how I let her know, and I will continue to strengthen those conversations as she continues to get older.
Wow. Ooh, it's so powerful, because I really believe the route that you're taking, that's empowering her right now. That's exactly what you're doing. And it's so wonderful, because we do have to reach our young ladies early to let them know really what's going on. So I want you to talk about your Women of Virtue Transitional Foundation. You spoke a little bit about it, but tell us, what types of events do you have? Who do you service? Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you just a little. I'm going to try to summarize it, because I tend to get a little excited and long-winded. But last year, if you notice, I'm very spiritual. And last year, for a while, I've been wanting to know what my purpose is here on this earth. What am I supposed to do before I leave here? Because not a lot of people figure out what their purpose and passion is for being here, and they just kind of exist. And so I prayed for it, and I kept asking God and saying, what is it I'm supposed to do? And literally, February of 2016, last year, I was sitting in church, and I'll be honest, I really wasn't into what was going on. Like, I was kind of in the moment. Something was on my mind, but I just was sitting there listening to my pastor speak, if you will, missing a lot, bits and pieces of it. And the Holy Spirit spoke to me and said, basically, not exactly this way, but you need to start an organization that focuses on the gaps in the system for survivors of abuse. And, to me, like, I never jump on something without thinking. Never. I actually overanalyze. And I will kid you not, by February 25th, and this was like the beginning of February 25th, I got the approval of my 501c3 for my nonprofit. I'd already done all the paperwork, the business license, the name. I can't even tell you how the name came about. I believe it came in a dream. Honestly.
Wow.
But it came to me, and I didn't know honestly didn't know where I was going, didn't know where to start, didn't know where to finish. But somehow God allowed me to pull it all together. And with my organization last year, it was wide and vast, a big, huge mission statement, I'll be honest, that I wasn't able to bring to fruition, not all of it. But what I was able to do was have an event last year that hosted 45 attendees that brought together 5 organizations that brought together survivors of abuse from the sexual abuse walk, sexual abuse, child abuse, domestic violence, and from domestic violence from a military wife standpoint. I had a silent auction which brought in about 60 gifts from organizations that did not even know who I was. I also was able to feed 21 people last year, 6 families, and provide them with food boxes, and each one of their children was able to receive 5 gifts, 3 of which they wanted from their wish list. I was able to go and speak my first time was at my event last year, and the very next day I spoke at a church. I was able to get involved with the Marcy's Law campaign, which is basically a movement which is trying to change the way the legislation handles the way domestic violence survivors are notified when the offender moves through the system. So I was able to be a part of that campaign and one of the faces of that campaign, if you will. And then I was able to meet with, I'd say, about 15 young ladies who were in it or trying to get beyond it. And while I could not provide them shelter, I was able to provide them with resources where they could get out of the situation and assist them with escape plans. How do I get out of this situation when he's not around or she's not around, if you will? How do I get out of it? I was able to assist them with that. To me, it didn't seem like enough. And there's more that I did, but I'm like trying to think of everything I did last year. And then this year, thank you, God, I was able to get approved for a small grant. And then I was recognized by a sister organization, No Longer the Face Foundation, recognized me for my works last year, and they gave me a stipend of $1,000 this year. So this year alone, I did some donations and things for our troops overseas. I had candy and cards sent to them, which is a little bit outside of our scope. But then I also was able to, in my hometown, as a matter of fact, this upcoming weekend, I will be hosting a book pack giveaway and basically hosting 25 children, giving them backpacks and supplies and cupcakes and speaking to an officer. And what else are we doing? We are the biggest thing. I'm so excited about it. My organization is giving a grant to a young lady whose mom can no longer afford to pay for her performing arts tuition. So she wants to go to dance, and she's got so much potential, but her mom was going to have to remove her from the class. So I'm giving a grant of $250 in my first true year of this organization being established and partnering with the studio to provide her with full tuition for this year, for the rest of this year into next year. And then my event this year is going to be Purple Orchids, Survivors, and Thrivers. And I'm recognizing 4 beautiful women who are thriving, have survived abuse, and they're thriving in their current situation. Like they're striving to be more than a face of abuse. And then I have several artists that will be there that are also in some form or fashion associated with surviving and being abused or abuse. I am recognizing 4 individuals in the community that has done some awesome work. One that I'm really excited about, I can't share, but one of them is Ann Cassis of Marcy's Law. I'm recognizing her for all of her hard work and everything that she's done in the community to make changes to the system and how the judicial system is changing things. In addition to that, I provide mentorship. I mentor young ladies on being more than just mediocre, being leaders. So I do mentorship through the Atlanta Glow program.
You do a lot.
It's a lot, but I love it.
Okay. And this is all under the umbrella of the Women of Virtue Transitional Family Foundation.
Yes, ma'am.
That is absolute. That's such a blessing that you're able to do these things. And so I really want you to really just share where the listeners can reach out to you. Maybe they want to give to your foundation. Maybe they want to have you come speak. Maybe it's someone in a domestic situation that needs to reach out. Where can people find you?
They can visit my website, which is www.perfectly-imperfect-womenofvirtue.com. They can find me on Facebook. It's Women of Virtue Foundation. They can email me at womenofvirtuefoundation@gmail.com. They can find my blog, Dark Skin is Beautiful, at wordpress.com. They can find me on Twitter, Sonya Mckinzie. But if you want Perfectly Imperfect and you are a survivor of abuse, send me an email. I've got you. Send me an email.
Wow.
I would love to put this book in the mail to you and help you in some form or fashion. If I can't be there with you, no matter where you are, Texas, Georgia, overseas, wherever, I will get it to you. Reach out to me, and I've got you. Young ladies, young men, I want to help you through your journey to survival. So please reach out to me, and I'll be there for you. I've got you.
Wow. What a blessing. That's really all I can say, is that you are a blessing, and I'm sure you have been a blessing for so many. What is a final message that you want to leave with individuals, whether they're your readers or, again, they're just someone in the situation that's looking for a way out? What's your final message?
I would have to say, if you are in it, if you are observing someone that's in it, don't look away. As someone that's in it, a victim, there is a way out. I know it seems like there isn't, but I promise you there is a way out. All you have to do to start, if you don't know any other number, any crisis line or anything, 911 will start it. The National Crime Victims Line, you can call that. Call National Crime Victims Line. I'm sorry I don't have it in front of me. But they will put you in touch with a resource anywhere, any state, any place, to get you out of that situation. If you are a victim, please know there's a way out. Please know that. Don't question it. If you feel like you're going to lose everything, it's okay. Have faith you'll get it back, because your life is worth more. If you are a stander by or an observer who sees this going on, please say something. Please. They're afraid. If the victim's not saying anything to you, they're afraid. And please know it is okay to speak on their behalf, because if you know that this is going on, you can share. You can share anonymously. I believe that there's abuse going on in this situation. Can you check it out? Or if you feel comfortable, say something to the victim. Let them know that you're there. But please do not look away, because looking away a life could be lost. If you get yourself involved, you could be saving a life.
Wow. Sonya Mckinzie, I am just so grateful that we were able to connect. You are doing so many wonderful things. And so I just really want to say thank you. Thank you for coming on and sharing your gifts, sharing your knowledge and your experience with the listeners of Write the Book Now. Thank you so much.
I thank you very much for having me on. You're so awesome. Thank you for allowing me to utilize you as a platform to share my message. I appreciate you.
So, guys, this has been Write the Book Now interview and podcast show. I've been talking with my guest today, Ms. Sonya Mckinzie. Write your book. Tell your story. Don't wait. Write the book now.
Thinking about writing a book? Then with Dr. Sharon H. Porter. Twitter. And if you're contemplating becoming a published author,
Go ahead and write the book now.